All right, well, thanks you guys for joining me. My name is Patrick New. I am the Alliance Manager here at Avalara, and my role is to handle our partnership and touch points with Salesforce. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about sales tax compliance. You may say this isn't the most exciting thing to pair with technology, right? It's tax. But it's one of the more necessary things, and every business has some tax requirements. So to give you guys a little bit of a sense of how Avalara uses technology to streamline that tax process and make it easier for your businesses, from your finance team to your developers and your IT team managing those systems. So quick overview, going to give you guys an idea of what is the tax challenge. What is the problem that we're trying to solve, that we're trying to automate with technology. We'll go through a little bit of the solution overview, what products Avalara offers to solve these problems, and then touch in a little more detail on the specific integrations we have with Salesforce and other platforms, and then lastly we'll touch on our open API and some of the capabilities we have there. So this is not my favorite topic. Nexus is one of these things that every business has to deal with, but we can't really talk about tax compliance without addressing it. It's something that without Nexus, there is no need for tax compliance, but if you don't properly understand it, it can become a real issue for your business. Now what Nexus is, it's simply a requirement to collect and remit tax in a jurisdiction, or a state most commonly. Now, some businesses, they never leave their state. You might have a mom and pop shop located down the street. They're only going to be required to collect and remit tax in that one state, that one jurisdiction. But for most businesses, we have business activities across the country, across the globe, and those business activities create that requirement to deal with tax in multiple jurisdictions. Now, there's two things that will create Nexus for any business, and in any state really, and that's property and payroll. If you've got property in a state, you have a warehouse, you have an office there, you're going to have Nexus in that state. And if you have a W-2 employee in that state, that will also create Nexus for you. But after that, it kind of depends on the state's rules, and it varies from one state to another. So for instance, if you attend a trade show in some states, that can create Nexus for you. A lot of those of us here, we go to a lot of shows. Well, our finance team may not realize that we're actually creating a tax obligation by attending these trade shows. More recently, we see things like economic nexus and affiliate nexus. And these are really important for online companies, for e-commerce companies, because what affiliate nexus is something where if you, say, use a banner ad on someone's website, and someone clicks through that website, and they come to your site, and they buy something, well, that affiliation can create Nexus for you in the state that the company is headquartered at that you had that banner ad with. They look at it as a referral relationship. They're driving business to your company. The other thing we're seeing more recently is economic nexus. And this is something more states are passing where they are simply saying, if you do enough business in our state, we're going to make you start collecting and remitting tax there. Now, I think Minnesota was the first state to do that, and they set it at $250,000. If you sell more than $250,000 in the state of Minnesota, they don't care if you've ever set foot there or not, you now have that requirement. So that's the first step in dealing with sales tax, is figuring out as a business, where do you actually have that requirement? Next thing you have to look at is, what are you selling? What products and services do you provide? And unfortunately, just like Nexus, those rules change from one state, one jurisdiction, one country to the next. We've got some interesting rules here. Some examples, for instance, in the state of New York, if you slice a bagel, that makes it taxable. Why is that? Well, it's because you're taking something that was not a prepared food, and you're therefore preparing it. And they have a rule around prepared foods being taxable. If you buy 6 donuts in the state of Texas, that makes it exempt. I don't know why. That one I'm not sure about. But I guess they're essentially incenting people to always get that half a dozen donuts. Point is, these rules change from state to state. More importantly, probably for this crowd, we talk about software and how that can be taxed in some places. Here in California, it's not taxed. In the state of Washington, in Seattle, Washington, where I'm headquartered, we do tax software. And what happened is, it used to be considered a tangible product. We used to deliver software on a CD. That was something physical, right? The state said, hey, we can tax that. Well, then we started to evolve. We started downloading it. We even called it software as a service. And that became a little more convoluted for the states. They didn't know, is this a service? Should we not tax it? Is this actually still a product? How is it being delivered? So these rules have continued to evolve, and they change literally monthly. You even have some states like Texas where they couldn't decide whether it was a product or a service, so they partially taxed it. They tax it at 80% of the total rate. So you get some really weird scenarios, especially around digital goods. So what happens when you go to calculate, you go to invoice a customer, and you say, all right, I need to charge them tax. Great. How much tax do you charge them, and what goes into that decision? Well, there's quite a few things. First, you got to figure out where they are. And you need to make sure that you have an accurate address. So you got to validate that address and make sure, all right, we actually know the location that they are. Then you have to apply sourcing rules. Is this a state that charges tax based on where you're shipping from or where you're shipping to? Or in some cases, like California, it can be both. They'll actually charge a sourcing rate for the county and the state tax at the point of ship from, and then source that city rate at the destination. So after you do that, all right, you know the location, you know where you want to tax it. What jurisdictions apply there? Well, there can be as many as 6 jurisdictions at one location. Most commonly, you're going to have a state rate, you're going to have a county rate, and you've got cities, but then you also have special taxing jurisdictions. The first special taxing jurisdiction in the country was BART. So things like transportation, stadium taxes, police departments, fire departments, basically anything that a local municipality can think to add an extra fraction of a rate on to generate more revenue. So all these go into figuring out just what that rate is. Okay, so now you've got a rate, then you've got to apply any rules that apply to it, and that's that product taxability I was talking about. All right, is this even a taxable product in that location? Then you've got to look at who you're selling to. Is the customer even taxable? They might be a tax exempt as a nonprofit, or they might be tax exempt for the reason of the use. They're reselling it. So it's a wholesale scenario. After that, you've got to look at, all right, are there any tax holidays? Sometimes back to school season, we don't tax clothing, we don't tax school supplies, but that's a period thing. After all that, you can make a tax decision. And that all happens with Avalara in less than a second. When the customer says, okay, I'm ready to buy, to when they have sales tax back in that shopping cart or invoice, that all happens in less than a second. So that's the challenge, right? This is the complexity of sales tax and use tax and value-added tax globally, but how do we solve that with software? Well, we do it with integrations. Now, Avalara has over 600 integrations to different platforms and products that we all use every day. But before that, I want to dig into those. We'll talk a little bit about the product suite that Avalara offers. Now, the main product that our flagship product, is called AvaTax. And this is that tax calculation tool that I just described. This is where it integrates in to your platforms that you're invoicing and transacting with your customers. And we're looking at your tax profile. What are you selling? What are you selling? Who are you selling to? And then Avalara keeps all the rates and rules from the governments up to date on our end. So we pull that information from the invoice, hits our system in an API call. We come back with a tax calculation in less than a second. But for other businesses, they don't charge sales tax. Now, this may be because of the industry they're in, or it might be their go-to-market strategy. But if you don't charge sales tax and you have Nexus in a state, you have that requirement to collect an exemption certificate. So if you're a big manufacturer and you only deal through wholesalers, you'll never charge anyone tax. But every time you don't charge them tax, you have to get an exemption certificate, keep that on file in case of an audit, and prove why you didn't charge tax. So Avalara has a solution called Cert Capture. It's basically a document management tool to manage all those certificates. For some businesses, they have hundreds, others have tens of thousands. Lastly, you have to get all this tax and report it back to the government. And that's where the Avalara returns product comes in. Because we've done the tax calculations, we have all the data for your tax liabilities, and we can automate the process of filing and getting those returns back to the government agencies. And it's as simple as approving a worksheet once a month, set up an ACH trust account with us, and we'll pull those funds and remit them on time and in the correct format for you. So this is the Avalara product suite. These three solutions, they can be used standalone. A lot of our customers will use all three. Some of them will use one or two and even another tax vendor. But the main differentiator that Avalara has is all of the integrations to all of the different ERPs, CRMs, e-commerce, point of sale, order management systems. We run to CPQ, billing. There's so many different platforms out there that you could need tax in. And it's been our strategy to go out there and make pre-built integrations to lessen the development work for our customers and their partners. So by having these pre-built integrations, it's easy to take one tax profile and plug it in, and you're off and running with automated sales tax right in that environment. Now, it's also very common to use more than one of these at a time. You're going to have an e-commerce shopping cart that you might have tax calculations in, but then if someone does a return, you need to be able to process that same tax calculation in your order management system or your ERP. And also, you just talk about the multiple channels that many businesses have. A lot of times, those are running through different platforms. So a little more specifically, within the Salesforce environment, where does Avalara work? Well, we have an integration with Sales Cloud. So if you're doing quotes or invoices within the CRM, we can calculate tax there. Further in that, we also have integrations with CPQ and billing. I'll touch a little bit further on. We have an integration with Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and then a lot of the Force.com partners. So Financial Force, Accounting Seed, other ERPs within the environment. Talk a little bit more detail about one of our longer-standing Salesforce partnerships, formerly Demandware. Salesforce Commerce Cloud is a company that we've been working with for since 2012. We've had a pre-built certified integration or cartridge with them since then. For a business that has some of the biggest retailers in the world, we've got over 100 customers that are already live on the system. We added 30 last year, and we were the 2016 Technology Partner of the Year. It's because we're one of the most used ISVs in that industry. Specifically, if you're a developer working on this, we've got the ability to do their pipelines, controllers, and also a really cool new product that came out for them, which is mobile-first reference architecture. And if you get a chance to go by the Commerce Cloud booth, you can actually demo some of the shopping carts that they've done on your phone and tablet. And it's something that Avalara recently got certified, actually just yesterday, I believe. So we're up to speed there. Similarly, if you talk about Sales Cloud, we are lightning ready. Within the CRM, we are integrated into the sales order and sales invoice portion. So at that point where you want to show tax to a customer on an order or an invoice, that's where we touch there. The address validation, we're actually going to pull from the account level or the contact level. So wherever that information resides, we want to touch the correct point there. And then we can use entity use codes and exemptions to apply that product and customer taxability that we discussed earlier. For Salesforce CPQ, very similar, working in the sales order and sales invoice, pulling all that information from the address validation at the account level again. Really, the point here is that we can calculate tax where it's needed, and within the CPQ space, often that's also with the Salesforce billing connector, which we also have an integration to. So what this all really comes down to is that Avalara is taking a cloud-based tax engine and looking at a company's profile, being able to easily calculate the correct tax, doing it in an efficient manner so that you're not using a ton of resources from your IT team or your finance team, and there's not much development done there because we've got over 600 pre-built integrations. Now, let's say it's one of those platforms that we don't have an integration to. Well, we also have an open API. So one of the great resources Avalara has is our dev.site. You can go to developer.avalara.com, and this is somewhere you can dig in to our API. You can look at the code. It's a pretty simple API. There's only 7 fields that we are required to make a tax decision. And it's the things you would commonly see on an invoice. Ship from, ship to, we need a customer code, and then it's the line item stuff like product or description, quantity, amount. That's all we need to make a tax decision. If you're doing it globally, it's 3 more fields. We need the VAT ID, we need a currency code, and the country code. So it's just a few more fields, and we can do global transactions as well. Now, with over 70,000 taxing jurisdictions global, this is a great way for people to come in, test the product, and really get hands-on before you or your client is purchasing the product. As I mentioned, you can test this ahead of time. So if you go to developer.avalara.com, you can actually download 60-day free trial and start to work on the code yourself. Now, ultimately, why do companies use Avalara? Well, it's twofold. We reduce their risk in their compliance process, making sure they're accurate, they're doing it properly. When the time comes for an audit, they're going to have the right tax reporting, and they're going to be prepared for it, right? And so it reduces risk. The other thing it does is it increases your efficiency in the compliance process. So from a development standpoint, you're not going to have as much development work building out these integrations. We've got a cloud-based solution, so that decreases internal server time, and we're really ready to make a solution that really decreases risk, increases efficiency. And since Avalara has been in business in 2004, we've added over 20,000 customers. Like I said, over 600 pre-built integrations. And these are a few interesting figures. We do 5 billion transactions a year. 225 million exemption certificates are managed. And every year we touch over $18 billion that's remitted back to government agencies. So we've got over, I think, 18 offices globally now, headquartered in Seattle, Washington. Our international headquarters is in Brighton, UK. And that's all I have for you guys today. I think usually this slide says questions, but if we have any, I'd be happy to take those now. If not, I'll wrap things up, and I appreciate everyone's time. Great. Thanks, guys.